we're going to move to Isaiah, it looks like, but let me just get back to Daniel chapter 9 quickly. The expectation was, even from late, this has to do with the Messiah coming. Rashi, who was I think an 11th century.
Wait, how do we have late rabbinical scholars? You're talking about pre-Christian, right?
No,
11th century.
11th, 12th century.
And my only point in bringing that up is to establish
now I'm confused. So after the time ascribed to Jesus, which I have to confess I'm a mythicist, there was no fucking Jesus. But after the time that is posthumously ascribed to Jesus, we have people who are predicting Jesus?
No. Rashi was one of the big three rabbis. They refer to him as the big three. He was one of them, and he was the first one to postulate that Isaiah 53 was about the nation and not about the Messiah.
There's two open questions here. Is this messianic at all? And if it is, was it pointing to Jesus? So you will find Jews who agree that it's a messianic prophecy, but don't agree that Jesus was the fulfillment. And then you'll find other Jews that don't believe that it was messianic.
I got a completely irrelevant question for you. Why do any of you believe any of this horseshit?
I think it's very reasonable as you look, as I've examined the data, it seems reasonable. I mean, especially as we start.
You and I need to have a podcast.
Yeah.
You.
Yes, sir.
Why why couldn't you just be using Aesop's fables instead of the Bible right now?
Because that wasn't the topic of our discussion.
What difference would it make?
Well,
I mean, couldn't you come up with just as many rationalizations for that as you could for this?
I suppose with some work you could, yeah.
I've seen Hindu Vedic scholars that take the Mahabharata and twist it in just as harsh a way as Christians do.
Yeah.
So what's the difference?
Aaron, I can go ahead.
Well,
Josh.
I'm going to ask you.
That's why I saved you for last.
Yeah, we only have an hour and 10 minutes.
He wanted to make sure we got a chance to talk. So,
That's all right. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
And
this
you.
is the purpose.
Okay. Another story, if you don't mind.
Well,
Wait,
we're not done here yet.
I thought you were.
Talk in, Josh.
He's going to answer you in a parable.
Well, no, I would encourage you not to do it. Because, Aaron, no disrespect, but it sounds like you came to this unprepared. Because we're supposed to be talking about Daniel and Isaiah and whether Jesus is prophesied, and you keep going to.
Well, but it is in fact important background. If there's no reason to believe this, then there's no reason to try to dig in and find out if Jesus is prophesied.
And I fully expected.
Well,
I fully expected his criticism because I hear it all the time.
Right.
I mean, I hear it every time I ever talk to Christians.
So to articulate.
I don't have any of the preconceptions that is inbuilt into any Christian.
Right.
So that somehow is a fault of mine.
No, I didn't say. I said that you
I think
weren't
your
prepared.
question's, I think your question's fair.
Equipped.
I mean, I think your question's fair, especially when you start talking about, well, what about the people before Christ? I mean, Romans chapter 1 talks about that, about how we can see the existence
where we
of God.
erroneously assume that, talk about I'm sorry, what is the quote? I shouldn't have interrupted because I can't remember off the top of my head what
From
the
Romans?
quote. Romans 1.
It's a gay bashing chapter.
Yeah, exactly. Where the fool,
And he's never even met these
fool said in his heart, "There is no God." Well, of course he does, and the scholar says it out loud. Yes, exactly.
But you look over in Acts chapter 17, Paul's on the Areopagus talking.
I'm sorry, what?
Psalm 14:1. That's what you.
talking
I
with
really
the
thought that was Romans. I thought it was Romans 1.
No.
Someone's got the. It's all right.
Okay.
Paul's talking with the Epicurean and Stoic philosophers, and then he makes this statement around, I don't know, verse 23 or so, and he says that basically we've been ordained, the time of our living has been decided. So basically God has divinely put us in this place and time. So, you as an atheist, you have been an atheist just as if you had been Billy Graham's son. You would still be an atheist. Just like I would be a Christian if I'd been your son. That God has divinely orchestrated our times of when we were born and when we would be here on this earth. And
Can you explain what you just meant about if I were Billy Graham's son?
Yeah,
I'd still be an atheist?
Yeah, because Acts 17, what Paul's talking about to these Epicurean Stoic philosophers is that God has put us on this planet at the exact timing that would be best for us, and that where we are in time is not going to change whether we believe or disbelieve in who God is. So, very well the Mayan unbelievers.
Calvinist, does he already decide?
So let's get real specific. If he blasphemes every day until his deathbed at 100 years old, and the last thing
deny
he said,
the Holy Spirit.
The last thing he said is, "I don't care." Do you believe that he is going to eternal damnation?
I don't think God's going to force Aaron to be in His presence for all
but
eternity.
let's be real
if Aaron
specific.
doesn't-
Wait.
Let's be real
God
specific.
is not going to force me to be in His presence
Right.
for all eternity.
But so
God is going to condemn me to the hell that He rules,
Right.
wherein I will be perpetually tortured with all the gnashing of teeth and burning of flesh, and I'll be regenerated every day just so that I can become. So we know that we have the stick and the carrot, right, where we
You're
have
like
the
Wile E.
impossible
Coyote running
reward
off the
that we'll
cliff.
never have to pay because
Right.
you're going to have to die, and we'll have the threat of the fate worse than death,
Right.
where we have the most heinous imaginable torture possible that anybody could ever come up
Of
with.
course, granted. My question is,
If we don't buy the completely unsubstantiated
no, but
bullshit,
wait, it's worse than that. You didn't have a
why
choice.
do
He already
you
knew.
believe it?
He already
That's
knew
my
before
question.
you were born, though. That's the thing. There's nothing about buying it because he already knew you were going to.
But I'm going to be judged not on what I do, because that's what a just God would do. And we're not talking about obviously this is not the just God, right? So we have somebody that judges people not on their actions, but on their beliefs. So how they've been fooled or
I think it's
controlled
both.
or reasoned themselves.
Romans 6:23 says, "For the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life through Jesus Christ our Lord."
So if the wages of the sin is
that's
death,
the reason why we're
which is
separated
what we're
from
all
God.
supposed to have anyway. We just die, like everything else. Like when I was 12, I said, I asked by being in prayer to God, why can't I just die, like I'm supposed to, like everything else? Why can't I just fucking die? Why do I have to be stuck in the house of little Anthony Fremont, where I have to always think positive thoughts because I have a fucking telepath who's ready to turn me into a goddamn jack-in-the-box anytime I think something bad?
I wouldn't have that as a characterization of God.
Of course you wouldn't. You haven't thought this through. That's why you're still fucking Christian. That's why you haven't broken away from the mind meld yet.
Well,
Gentlemen, I want to thank you guys for allowing us to have this guilty pleasure of having a conversation with Christians. We've always wanted to have.
I want to thank you
But we
too,
should probably get off
seriously, and
topic.
sincerely. I love having the interaction. I
But
need it.
the
I will never be accused of listening to a fucking echo chamber. Seriously, and I have been proven wrong, not just once, multiple times. I've been proven wrong and had to forcibly change my position
Absolutely.
when I've been proven wrong, and I'm ready to do it again.
These men brought wonderful books and notes and things, so we should
They
probably.
didn't bring wonderful books. They brought this one. They brought the most repugnant tome of man-made mythology ever conceived.
I brought those too, Aaron.
But see, I think as we dig a little bit deeper into the Bible, we can see why that somebody like me would still believe, and because there is
Help
a
me
reason,
with that.
There is a reasonable
Yes.
faith.
Do you have a prophetic
There
example?
is not. It's an oxymoron to say reasonable things.
let's get
Those
into
two
Isaiah
words
53.
don't belong in the same room.
Well, let's get into Isaiah 53.
Oh my God! Do you really want to do that? Are you sure?
Yeah.
But
Go
before
ahead.
we move on, I have one question I've been trying to ask though. If Aaron never changes his mind and he dies an atheist, or if he does change his mind and he dies a Christian, or
Whoa.
or something
No.
else.
Hopefully I will not have Alzheimer's or
Right.
a debilitating
You have the Anthony flu disease.
cranial injury, so that I will never be Christian.
But my point is, whichever one of these doors we open, you're saying that God, from the beginning of the universe, knew how it was going to go. You knew he was either going to change his mind or he didn't. And so evangelism or trying to convince anyone of anything is a moot point, because it already either was going to happen or not. Right?
So this is an argument for Calvinism.
So it's not a. Well, that's what I keep thinking. I'm hearing from these guys is that it's already been known from the foundation of the universe who
then how the fuck could God be negotiating?
So you're either going to eventually be convinced or you're not. But that answer already exists.
Abraham now talks to like the ultimate brain in all of existence, right? And says, well, what if there's only 10 people in Sodom? How are you going to negotiate with God? Right? If God was anything that he's advertised to be, then how the fuck could you possibly negotiate with that? You can't. Right. And you wouldn't be. It wouldn't be that God would, in both the flood and the Sodom and Gomorrah thing, would say, hey, who's the drunken asshole who sodomized his own kids? That's the one I'm going to save. That's not going to happen.
He was the good guy in the story. Right. So, but this has got to be an interesting question, right? If it's already known, then it either is going to be or it's not going to be. And I would accept this as an axiom. If there is a God of the universe that created us all and created the universe and everything in it, as I once believed for many years, and I'm wrong, he could convince me if he wanted to. I believe that an all-powerful God could convince me of his existence.
Would that be loving?
Saving you for last.
And he's made no effort to do so.
But would that be loving, though? For him to force you to believe something? Or would it be more accurate?
If he's going to punish us for what we believe, yes, that bastard ought to be able to give us the
And as a parent, I would say I would at least be a little less cryptic.
But it looks like what God's done, he's given us the wiggle room to where we can make a decision to reject him. I mean, it's not overwhelming.
Damnation.
It's not overwhelming.
And
with regenerating flesh in constant hellfire.
What makes that wrong, though?
Because we don't believe the unsubstantiated bullshit given to us by people who have no idea what they're talking about.
But it's not based on what we believe, it's based on what we've done.
But it's entirely based on what we believe and not what we've done.
But we're judged by what we've done.
But we're only exclusively judged by what we've believed. There is no exception wherein atheists can get into heaven. You can be forgiven of any sin if you but believe. All sins can be forgiven. It doesn't matter how evil you are if you but believe. But if you don't believe, then it doesn't matter how good you are because you didn't believe. And the only thing that gets you into heaven is if you believe. So gullibility is the only criteria for redemption. That's it. That's all. So why the fuck do you believe to such preposterous bullshit?
Ladies and gentlemen, are in Raw.
Yeah.
Ron,
I'm saving you for last.
Well, I mean, one of the reasons that I believe it is I think that God has the ability to write history in advance of it happening. I think.
Why does he fuck up?
Well, where does he?
Where he has to apologize to Moses for having fucked up, where he has to wipe the slate clean because he didn't realize that people were going to make so much fucking noise, so he's going to have to create a flood to kill everybody. Is there at least a less effective means of solving that problem than flooding the whole world? What's the most cost prohibitive way of doing that? The fucking flood. There's not a word of truth anywhere in this Aesop's Fables book that you're believing in. Why the fuck do you buy into it? Since there's not a word of truth in it. I mean, the only value any information can have is however accurate you can show it to be. That's to me, right? So if you can't show that it's accurate at all, it has no value at all. And that means that all of the sermons by all of the different religions are all worthless.
Well, Moses would agree. So in Deuteronomy 18,
Moses can't agree. Moses wasn't real.
Well, okay,
is that possible?
So
details.
Well, what I'm going to propose to you is that the Bible, even if Moses is a myth, it says within here that you can self-authenticate the scriptures themselves. Because if a prophet or a dreamer of dreams comes and says something that's not true, that he's supposed to be disregarded.
Okay, so how many different people have we seen who have gone into seminary and said, you know what, this is complete bullshit. I believed this my whole life, but now that I've studied it, Aesop's fucking fables.
Well, there was the
That
wrong
was
side
me.
there.
That was me.
But
A lot of
we
people
could
come out
say
of
that in
seminary.
reverse too, though. I mean,
Can you?
yeah.
I don't think you can.
Lee Strobel, J. Warner Wallace. I mean, we
Excuse
can
me,
start going down that list.
he just said Lee Strobel.
Lee Strobel
Like
was
that's
never an atheist.
actual claim to evidence. That fraud?
Grossman,
Really? Hey, I've got a great way to make $1 million fucking dollars. All I gotta do is tell this one simple fucking lie. Lee Strobel? Really? That was the worst example you could probably bring up.
So Lee, you don't think Lee Strobel was an atheist, or he?
I believe Lee Strobel's a complete fucking fraud. Absolutely all the way through. I think he's an atheist now. He makes a hell of a fucking money
Stereo.
lying to the most ignorant, fucking gullible, credulous assholes he can. You guys will believe any fucking thing. You believe that snakes and donkeys talk.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us on the podcast today.
All right, hold up. Let's all breathe in. Let's all breathe in.
Take a moment.
I
If it
haven't gotten
helps-
to this guy.
if it helps,
and
he can't
I
help
want
it.
him to have a valid. I want him to have actual. You know.
Well, no,
But
right now?
did I fuck up your show?
No, you absolutely haven't.
I've been on my best behavior. Which I realize that may be an indictment
I just
against
hope that
me.
you're a little more passionate. I mean, you've been so reserved this
He
whole
wants that
hour.
passion from you. He wants you to give it
Okay,
back.
but before we break, I promised this man that he would have the last show, or he would have the last statement on this question.
Okay, so
So-
there's one last thing.
Would you restate the question for me?
I find your claims frivolous.
I've been asking these gentlemen, why the hell do they believe any of this? So please explain, why do you believe this?
Okay, it's a little personal, but I don't mind opening up myself to that. My father took his own life when I was 18. And so one of the things, I was not raised in a Christian home and didn't have any sort of need to believe in Jesus. But one of the realities that first began undertaking studying the scriptures was the idea that I saw somebody, I felt like God as a father figure was doing fatherly things for me, the details of which I'll spare everybody with. That was the initial thing that got me into reading the scriptures. So I'll put it in a short story from the 19th century. In 1801, in Bavaria, the prince-elect Maximilian IV got word that a glass factory had collapsed, and underneath the rubble was a 14-year-old orphan. And that orphan was, when Maximilian found out about that, he went to the scene of the accident and started helping unbury
I've heard this story.
the man from the rubble. Yes, you probably
On
have, I
Cosmos.
think. Yeah, and from the rubble emerged a 14-year-old gentleman by the name of Joseph von Fraunhofer. Fraunhofer went on to invent the spectroscope. The spectroscope revolutionized our understanding of the heavens. In fact, when Maximilian pulled Joseph out of the rubble, Maximilian rebuked Joseph's boss, if you will, and told him to give Joseph the time to study. And then he and another benefactor gave Joseph money to be able to study, to be able to produce the spectroscope. And I think in a lot of ways, all the details aside, that is what Jesus did for me. He came to the scene of my destruction. I was buried under despair, and the Lord of the universe came down and rolled up his sleeves and rescued me. And that's why I believe.
Wow.
Very emotional.
Okay.
I don't mean to be emotional, but
Yeah.
that's what I believe.
Do you have any idea? While I respect.
No, I understand. I'm not trying to be emotional to persuade. It's just it's hard to
You
talk about that.
Just understand that I know someone who lives not 2 miles from my house, who I've known for decades, who gave me a very similar story about how Bast, the Egyptian cat-headed goddess, appeared in his house, physically manifest, and gave him a physical hug and bade that he be her disciple.
Well,
It's exactly the same story that I'm hearing from him as from you, except that I know that if I was in the room, I would not have seen a cat-headed goddess in his room.
no, and
It just wouldn't have happened.
I'm not saying that Jesus physically manifested himself under the pile of my despair, but
But the Bast physically manifested in my friend's house. It's the same story.
Well, and I would
And
say,
I've read testimonies from Hindus where they've met Krishna, physically seeing him and hearing him speak to them. It's the same thing.
But that doesn't prove that Jesus doesn't exist.
It's not.
It doesn't give the fuck all evidence that Jesus does exist.
I didn't say it
You're
did.
talking about an
I didn't say it
impossible claim of impossible nonsense for which we have no reason to believe. Okay? My friend giving the story, your story about meeting Bast, right, gives you no reason at all
What
to
would
believe
be-
that Bast exists, right?
What would be your criteria? I would just ask you this. What would be your criteria for evidence of God's existence?
Let's have a complete absence of faith required. Let's have it where it's objectively verifiable. That's it. If any belief requires faith, it should be rejected for that reason, because faith is the most dishonest position as possible to
But
have.
is that claim objectifiable?
Is it? Yes, it is.
How would you objectify that?
Because faith is believing something that is not evidently true. It's asserting as fact that which is not evidently supported.
Yeah, again, it gets back to the criteria of evidence.
Exactly.
What are you using for that criteria?
evidence.
No,
Exactly.
I mean, what do you mean? I mean,
Evidence.
Rex, if-
I'll accept
if
his
God
evidence.
created- if God
Anything
created the
that
universe-
qualifies as evidence, any objectively verifiable fact that is positively indicative
With these
of,
five senses, right?
or exclusively concordant with one available position over any other.
But the-
And no religion can produce that. Every religion claims it, but none of them can actually cough it up.
But the cosmos didn't tell you that, Arn.
No, the cosmos didn't tell me that.
Right.
Exactly. It's a lack of evidence.
But okay, if the universe isn't designed,
Mhm.
what would a divinely designed universe look like?
A lot different than this one.
Okay, on what
I don't
standard?
know, because we would have to first
The
ask,
first
where
thing
does
is
the God come from?
The first thing is we would have an eternal plane that we could travel on. It wouldn't be that we could only exist on 1/8 of the surface of this one rock of metal
And no other that we know of.
this one pebble of rock and metal, right? That we would have an eternal plane. That we wouldn't have an intraversible distance between this one sphere and any other we wanted to get to. If we had an anthropic principle, then we would be able to go to other places. We would be able to hop between them easily, but that's not the case here. We will be extinct before the next civilization ever discovers that we existed, or before we know they exist. And so in our arrogance, we'll think we're the shit. We will think that we are the reason that the universe exists, just like our Bible says.
But so you're saying that if God created the universe, it would be more habitable.
If God created the universe, the first thing he would do is create a manual that would describe the world accurately, instead of saying that we are a flat disk under a giant crystal dome with windows in it that let the rain come in.
There's no crystal in the Bible.
We're at
Except that there is. All through it. It describes the earth as being divided into 4 quadrants, which are
Talk
often...
about that
You're in charge,
We'll
right?
talk about that. I mean, that's cool. I want to hear what you have to say about that.
Okay, yeah, I can talk about
sure,
that.
sure.
There is the Bible does not ever describe the earth in relation to the
You
rest of
guys
the
are on
cosmos.
it right now.
Okay.
I'm going to use this probably.
That's fine. I'm
Tell me
I'm
when
all
do I
ears.
need to shut up?
No.
I'm listening. I'm listening.
I'm gonna rope you guys back. TJ's gonna rope you back in a little bit on top of this. This is gold. This is the tits. But,
You
we're
talking
gonna
about
take
the
15 minutes.
word
You can go
firmament?
refresh your shit.
Is that what you're thinking? That
Thank you, Jim.
gives you
Okay.
the crystalline dome is the firmament word?
We need to be on. I don't want to waste a moment of your effort.
No problem.
No, me, I'm like,
So,
I just want to blur.
I want to make sure it's recorded and uploaded.
Yeah. What do you think about? What are your thoughts? Or do you want to just talk on this on camera? Because I was
All right,
always
Ed.
I don't want to talk off camera.
okay. Cool.
Hey, we're on
Because
live
I
tonight.
respect
If you wanna
you.
watch
All
from
right.
home.
I want you to everything you say. I want it to be recorded clearly. So that
Sure.
you
No
can-
problem. No problem. Thank you.
But I will say this: when he asks you the question, what would a divinely created universe look like, and you start giving an answer, I would have to first know the nature of the divine, right? Like, so many of the gods of different religions in the past have not been all good, all loving, all knowing, eternal. There are gods that have been quite conniving and quite antagonistic to humans.
I've been on my best behavior, which
Yeah, this is the best
I realize that may be an indictment
I just
against
hope
me.
that you're a little